Yo, what's going on everyone? FreakyDude99 here, and today I bring you my ultimate Strand Titan build. I've been rocking this build so hard, and I can tell you it decimates every piece of content. I am meleeing, I am grappling, I'm popping my super every single time, and pretty much any activity I do, I spawn at least 100 orbs of power. This build goes absolutely insane, and it only requires one exotic weapon and the rest are up to you. Seriously, let's get into it and build this out. Starting off with the subclass, of course we have our Blade Fury super, and we're using Rally Barricade for the shortest amount of cooldown. We're using Grapple because the grapple melee is so strong on the Titan. We have our first aspect into the fray. Whenever we destroy a tangle, we're going to be granting us and our allies Woven Mail. Of course, while we have Woven Mail, our melee is going to regenerate faster. And we have Dranger's Lash. When we activate our class ability, we're going to send out a suspending wave. With the fragments, we're rocking Thread of Mind, so whenever we defeat a suspended target, we're getting class ability back. We want to focus class ability regeneration as much as possible. We're using Thread of Propagation, so any powered melee final blows grant our strand weapons unraveling rounds. This also includes grapple melee final blows. We're using Thread of Continuity, so whenever we suspend, unravel, or sever a target, they have increased duration on it. And we're using Thread of Generation, so whenever we deal damage, our grapple is going to recharge. Now that's going to do it for the subclass. Moving on to the weapons, the only weapon you need is Final Warning. Final Warning is an absolute beast with the simple fact that it's a strand weapon, it's a really strong sidearm, and it also has piercing sidearm this season, which means you can get through any barriers, as well as this inherently unravels targets when you do a full burst on an enemy. This means you can melt down champions, melt down bosses, melt down any type of enemy you need to with just this weapon. Now of course, if you want to rock any type of special weapon, go ahead, and any type of heavy weapon, go ahead. There's lots of good choices, but it's just up to you and your personal preference. And finally, for the artifact perks, you want to make sure you have piercing sidearm so Final Warning can clear through any types of shields or barriers. You want to have authorized mods, strand, and grenades to ensure that you can actually equip the proper amount of mods for this build. Untangler, of course, whenever we destroy a tangle with a strand weapon, it's going to suspend the targets damaged by it. And Volatile Flow, whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, we're getting volatile rounds. This is nice if we're rocking a Void special or heavy weapon. There's also Bricks from Beyond, which is really nice to have, so whenever we defeat a powerful combatant with a Void weapon, it has the chance of spawning heavy ammo for us and our teammates. As well as Allied Unraveling, rapid final blows with the strand weapon will grant our weapon unraveling rounds. This is really nice to have as well to ensure that we don't always need to get a powered melee final blow to trigger unraveling rounds. And then finally, Threaded Blast, destroying a tangle with a strand weapon creates a larger, more damaging explosion. These are the ones I recommend you run. Of course, for the final one, it's up to you. I went Void Weapon Channeling in case I'm ever running a Void Weapon, but you can also go something like Medieval Champion if you like running glaives like the new Vex Caliber glaive. Moving on to the armor and the mods, we're going to be rocking hands-on, so any charged melee final blows or grapple melee final blows will be granting us super energy. We're using heavy ammo finder, so we always have heavy ammo dropping for us. Strand siphon, so our final warning spawns orbs of power. For the stats, we're going to be focusing resilience and strength with discipline as a third. Now, strength is really important to have at 100 here because it allows us to have our melee back as quickly as possible. Our melee is going to be applying a bunch of benefits to us, and it's really important to have active at all times. If you're wondering about this extra mod socket, it's because of Artifice Armor from the Master Dungeons. Moving on to the gauntlets, we're going to be using Focusing Strike, so we get class ability energy back whenever we cause damage with melee attacks. This includes our charged melee, but also our grapple melee. This ensures that we always have our barricade to use, as well as we're using firepower and heavy-handed. Now, these actually work in a very interesting way with the grapple melee. Because a grapple is a grenade, but the melee is technically a melee, You spawn 2 orbs of power whenever you kill an enemy with the grapple melee, as well as heavy-handed makes it so just our charged melee gives us back orbs of power. This ensures we have an insane amount of orb generation and will always have our super when going into some heavy ad encounters. On the chest piece, we're going to be using Charged Up to increase the maximum number of stacks we can hold to 4, and then we're going to be using Concussive Dampener and Melee Damage Resistance. Now here's where I get a little more personal in what I pick. Depending on what content you're going into, they will have different types of damage and you'll have different things that you'll be running into. Of course, if there's more snipers or if you have a problem with being sniped, throw on a sniper damage resistance. If you have problems with splash damage, throw on a concussive dampener. It's all up to you and your personal choice and preference. For our leg armor, we're going to be using the exotic Abeyant Leap. This has the exotic perk Puppeteer's Control, which makes Drenger's Lash spawn 2 additional projectiles. They will track targets more aggressively and travel further, as well as any targets we suspend will grant us Woven Mail. This is an absolutely overpowered exotic and is really the best thing to be using on Titan right now. I know a lot of people are using Heart of Inmost Light for ability spam, but this ensures you have ability spam and crazy amounts of damage resistance and crowd control. It's really an overpowered exotic on the Titan. For the mods, we're going to be using Strand Weapon Surge, so whenever we have an armor charge, we're going to get a bonus to our weapon strand damage. We're also using stacks on stacks, so any orbs of power we pick up, we're going to be getting 2 stacks of armor charge. And then recuperation, whenever we pick up an orb of power, we're going to be getting a slight burst of health. Recuperation is vital for your survival in any type of endgame content. Going into legend difficulties, you are going to be needing to have recuperation, as if you want to dive in and do melee attacks or grapple melees, spawning those orbs of power from those melees and immediately picking them up ensures that you don't get melted down by the enormous amount of enemies surrounding you. It's really vital that you have this mod. For the class item, we're going to be using Font of Restoration. This is to just ensure that our recovery gets a bump up. That way, if your recovery is in a low stat roll like mine, you can mitigate that whenever you have an armor charge, which is pretty much constantly. And then we're also using Bomber and Distribution. This ensures that whenever we're using our class ability, which is always, we're going to be getting ability energy back from that, as making sure we have our grapple as well as our melee up at almost all times ensures we have an amazing amount of survivability with this build. Now this build is an absolute beast in a lot of activities and content I've put it against. You have constant woven mail, which is a lot of damage resistance. You have amazing health regeneration from all the orbs you spawn, and you have an amazing amount of super generation as well as ability generation just from doing your grapple melee, your melee attacks, your barricade, and defeating the suspended targets. Really, you go absolutely crazy with this build, and it's so fun to dive into a group of enemies, especially on the harder content, as I wasn't sure exactly how grapple would work, especially when enemies can just melt you down, but having that recuperation and getting that healing from any orb spawned from your melee final blows, it helps out so much. As well as spawning 2 orbs of power from any grapple melees makes it so you can constantly farm out supers for you and your allies. This build goes absolutely crazy, and I highly recommend you build it out and slap it into your loadout section. Of course, if you want a picture of it, here it is now in all of its glory, as well as if you have any suggestions for what I can do to improve this build for next time, be sure to leave them in the comments. Of course, we are so close to 1,000 subscribers, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Of course, this is FreakyDude99, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out, everyone.